Back at it, Freaky Friday, Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy on fire with the play of the day. And football is here. We'll hit the marquee games in college football this weekend. Two monster showdowns, Washington, Auburn, Notre Dame, Michigan. We got some weather possibly in that game. We'll run through everything, and bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Sports Bet Betting Insight today. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. I'm at Real Sports Bet on Twitter. He's at Teddy_covers. You need the coffee, Teddy. That 4-hour marathon between Purdue and Northwestern, and we gave out Northwestern plus 3.5 about a month ago.
Yeah, and look, the Northwestern second half offensively was pretty dicey. They really never found a rhythm, but Purdue made enough mistakes early, and Northwestern's D got the stops they needed to. And, of course, the penalty to end the game, essentially, to allow Northwestern to take a knee at the end, when it felt like Purdue might have one final drive in them, the flag dooms their chances. The Wildcats get the win. The Wildcats get the money. And, 4-hour marathon. Get welcome. You're welcome to college football 2018.
Yeah, nice. Dog outright with them and the Raiders as well. I don't get you have an NFL quarterback. You go right down the field twice to start 14-0, and you take him out of the game. Fitzgerald, who I like. He's got his quarterbacks on a pitch count. That's something. Let's start with a moose. Preseason football. The Bears 2.5 or 3 last night. 27-3 in the fourth quarter at home. A.J. McCarron goes the whole way, was awful early, and throws some touchdowns late, and the Bills win 28-27.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't see this in a preseason game where a team is down 27-3 in week 4 in the fourth quarter. It's over. I mean, this doesn't happen. Ever. Happened last night. And McCarron wasn't even any good in the fourth quarter. 4 touchdown drives, and the 3 of the 4 were long. One came after an interception, but the Bears couldn't get a first down. Or I should say the Bills. The Bears couldn't get a first down, and the Bills, with McCarron, steal one. They missed the 2-point conversions. They still get the win, get the money. Ouch for Chicago backwards. That one hurt. That illegitimate moves.
The biggest MLB decision of the year here in town at the South Point. The Yankees from $3 up to $3.70. Yankees on the run line. The Yankees straight bet. Yankees run every parlay ticket. Betances blows it in the 9th. They led 7-5. The Tigers get 3 and win. And the Yankees lose to a bad team again. Huge result for the books, 70-cent steam. And with the football starting, and you had also the preseason games, you had the Yankees on every ticket, and that's a definition of a scoop Jackson.
Sure, absolutely. Books love this result, and this would have been a disaster had Betances not blown the save. But we continue to talk about the Yankees bullpen as being elite. Cracks last night. Certainly a bad beat for Yankees bettors. A bad beat that served the bookmakers very, very well.
This was tough. An extra game. Utah at home against Weber State. That went 24, bet up to 30. 10-0 Weber State early in the game. They don't score the rest of the way, and they lose 41-10. Oh, if you got a great number, that's horrible what happened there. They scored early, and then that was it. Bad for the books. Here's a middle job. At the South Point, Tulane opened plus 13. They were as low as 5.5. You could have grabbed the Wake and laying 5.5 or 6. They won by 6 in overtime. Hitting the quarterbacks out the first 3 games. Hartman comes in, Teddy, and threw 50 times and looked good. And Jonathan Banks, the quarterback of Tulane, played well. Fascinating game, fun game, but Wake wins by 6 in overtime.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch. And certainly not a great result for the house when you talk about, and some of these week 1 line moves are enormous, but they're not quite as enormous as they might seem because there's only a handful of books that posted early. Most books posted much later. But the bottom line is, A, it lands right in the closing number. B, it was available. You could cash on both sides. And C, most of the money did come on Tulane over the summer. All in all, not a good result for the books. I don't know if they'd have preferred it had Wake won that game by a field goal instead of the touchdown in OT without the extra point. Mind you, all they needed was the TD. But either way, not a good result for bookmakers. Not a game they enjoy.
Another one, Oklahoma State from 38 up to 46. Missouri State was late getting to the stadium. Their bus broke down. That was 58-17. Not a good landing spot. But again, these move quick. not a lot of action on these games. Doesn't take much to move them, rather. Minnesota from 15 up to 23. Everyone watched that game Saturday night with Wyoming destroying New Mexico State. 48-10 Minnesota. New Mexico State only touchdown set up on a Minnesota fumble deep in their own territory. Ball State from 13.5 up to 19.5. They won 42-6. That originally was the move on against them as it went down to 12 and then up to 19.5. Easy win there. I mentioned Utah 24 up to 30 as they win by 31.
Yeah, and though, the one I want to highlight here, of course, is the Golden Gophers against New Mexico State. Teams talk about between week 1 and week 2. That's where you have your biggest growth as a team.
Yep.
New Mexico State on a short week with long travel didn't show a whole lot of growth. Books lost on the side there. They also lost on the total as money came in on the over before that ball game, money that cashed with relative ease.
Brock Osweiler gets it done. Miami +3 went off a 2-point favorite. They rout Atlanta 34-7. Quinn does not care about the regular season. Jets Eagles under 36.5 down to 33.5. Never a sweat. 10-9 Eagles. Cleveland +2.5 went off a 2.5-point favorite. Routed the Lions 35-17. Saints and under was ice cream. Saints from 4 up to 6 and the under from 38 to 33.5. 28-0 final, and I had to do it, Teddy. I had to put on and check out Luis Perez from Texas A&M Commerce for the Rams, and it was ugly in the second half.
as we expected, it might be. But the bottom line is the sharp bettors and the sharp money got most of week 4 of the NFL preseason right. A lot of these moves and significant moves. All of that Jets under money coming in, that all cashed. All the Browns money with Mayfield going, that all cashed. The Dolphins, hey, write this down. Starting week 1 next August. Fade the Falcons in the preseason. Dan Quinn now 2 consecutive Augusts where he hasn't covered a single point spread. That's worth noting. The bettors were all over that last night as they cleaned up in NFL preseason action. Although they didn't win them all, Pauly. They won a whole bunch of them.
Denver +3 went off a favorite at Arizona. Paxton Lynch 14-15. They won 21-10. Red Sox took money. Kind of a tough beat. 4-0 White Sox in the 7th. Especially if you took the plus money on the plus run and a half, and they lost 9-4. Bad bets. Jacksonville, Tampa under 36 to 33.5, 25-10. Green Bay, Kansas City under 38.5 to 36, not even close. Connecticut, 28 down to 24, routed 56-17 by Central Florida. Milton does it again, 5 touchdowns. The Purdue that opened 2 in the summer. They were +2, as high as 3.5. And they get beat by 4. Dodgers took money again. Rich Hill, 0-6 against the Diamondbacks. 130 up to 155. They lost 3-1. And the Pirates took money again, but they were shut out by the Cardinals 5-0.
Yeah, and I don't know why the money's coming against St. Louis. 2 days ago I understood it because Williams for the Pirates has been a monster. And obviously he shut down the Cards, but that wasn't the case last night. It wasn't Hill's fault that the Dodgers lost last night. Their bats are pretty cold. It's up and down for that team. And how about UCF? I thought that was impressive. Going to UConn and just felt like same old for the Knights, just like they were last year. As an elite team capable of blowing teams out on the highway. More of the same to open the 2018 campaign. Yep.
Huge move on the Yankees, as we mentioned, $3 up to 360, 370. They lost Astros 220 up to 250. Verlander beat again at home by the Angels. And the A's took money, 115 up to 135, routed at home by Seattle 7-1. Here we go. Monster game, 12:30 tomorrow, 12:30 Pacific, Auburn and Washington. 2 top 10 teams collide. It was Auburn 3, down to 2, down to 1.5. There's 1.5 right now, 48.5 the total. To me, can I trust Jake Browning in this game, Teddy? Now, all the hype last year, 2 years ago, Washington goes to the playoff, and Browning had 3,400 yards and 43 touchdowns. Last year, the offense struggled all season, only 19 touchdowns and 2,700 yards. They return a lot of guys. They return 9 starters on defense off the 10-3 season, but there were times where they really struggled on offense. Can these wide receivers, they lose Pettis, can these wide receivers get open against a good Auburn secondary? And also, the one thing I like, for whatever reason, Auburn's had problems in Atlanta. They've lost 2 in a row. And I got Chris Peterson, one of the best coaches with time to prepare, all that time, scout the opponent, great in non-conference matchups when he was at Boise, and expect some trick plays and some gadget plays as well. But to me, can I trust Washington and Jake Browning here?
And that's the biggest concern. Look, The only way I can play this game is to take Washington plus the points. When you grade these two teams out, the Huskies aren't weaker than Auburn. I'll tell you that. You go position by position across the field. But as you mentioned, you have the issues with Jake Browning. And Browning's got great career numbers, 29 and 11 as a starter. He's got a 78 to 24 career touchdown to interception ratio. The guy's played in a bunch of big games. But when you talk about Jake Browning stepping up against quality defenses, I'm telling you, we've been watching this guy. We're on the West Coast, Paul, that we've seen Washington. Jake Browning has not stepped up and played his best against quality opposing defenses. Now they got Myles Gaskin back on the to run the football. They've got a pair of NFL caliber tackles and 4 offensive linemen back. There's a lot to think that they can run the football. They control the line of scrimmage. Browning may have a little bit more success here than he's had in other previous big games. But when you look at the strength of that Auburn defense, I mean, let's not forget, Auburn's the only team in the country to beat Georgia and Alabama last year. And when you look at the strength of that defense, they're loaded up front and they're loaded in the secondary. That's a problem, perhaps, for a Huskies offense that, while fairly dynamic, hasn't stepped up in class particularly well.
And they lose Johnson at running back, and I don't think they'll be able to run the ball against this solid Washington defense, and that puts the pressure on the O-line and Stidham. Can they protect Stidham? Because last year, 36 sacks allowed, and he was on his back a lot as well. To me, it seems like a close game, going to come down to a key turnover maybe, a big special teams play, Teddy, and I think it's going to be low scoring as they feel each other out in a big heavyweight showdown. ESPN playoff predictor. If Auburn loses, they give them an 8% chance to make the playoffs. Washington, a 54% chance with a win. And a lot of people there are a lot of people just saying, forget it. Washington's going to win the Pac-12.
Well, I mean, this is Washington's chance on the national stage to show what they can do. You know, remember last year, Chris Peterson got into that spat with Kirk Herbstreit talking about the Pac-12 after dark, and no one on the East Coast is staying up to watch the West Coast or the Pac-12 games. Well, this is an afternoon game. It's at Auburn, 3:30 Eastern time, opening weekend, showcase weekend. This is a chance for Washington to prove they belong. It is more of a statement game for the Huskies than the Tigers. And of course, this is a Washington team that we don't see catching points very often. They were favored in every game that they played last year.
West Virginia and Tennessee from Charlotte. West Virginia 9.5, 61.5 the total. Pruitt takes over for Tennessee. Program in shambles, 4-8 last year. A horrible passing defense, which is a recipe for disaster. Because now you get one of the best quarterbacks in college football in Heisman hype with Will Grier, who had, 34 touchdown passes and missed games at the end of last season with that broken finger. To me, can West Virginia get some stops and be considered a sleeper to win the Big 12? I think so. But it starts here. A show-me game for West Virginia. They're supposed to blow out Tennessee and get ready for NC State in a couple weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And look, when you have the Heisman candidate at quarterback, you know what happens when you have a touchdown lead in the second half? You go for a 2-touchdown lead. When you have a 2-touchdown lead, you go for a 3-touchdown lead. It's not like Will Grier can win the Heisman with a great performance against Tennessee. But Dana Holgorsen knows, hey, he wants to get the quality recruits. Best way to do it is get the best guys and get them hyped up and get them in Heisman consideration. This is something that can help the state of the program for years to come. So I don't expect, not that West Virginia is a team that plays conservatively with a lead anyway, but if they got a chance to run this up, I expect they will do that. And of course, we're talking about a Mountaineers team.
Oh.
They've got experience. Huh?
No, it's interesting. Yeah, no, I agree. Good point. I agree. Yeah.
But the Mountaineers have experienced really where it matters most. They have the senior quarterback in Grier. They have a loaded offensive line. And you look at that secondary defensively, you got questions in the front seven. I have no questions about that secondary. That the defense will be capable of shutting down some decent passing games this year if they can get a pass rush.
And this will be the play of the day. The monster showdown Saturday night. Michigan at Notre Dame. Notre Dame 1.5, 46.5 the total. Come on, Jim Harbaugh. Show me game. 1-7 against top 10 teams. Last year lost to Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, South Carolina, and Ohio State. He is 9-8 in his last 17 games. He's 2-7 against Ohio State, Michigan State, and in the bowl games. He finally has a quarterback. All we hear about is Patterson's going to be terrific. You got concerns about the wide receiver position. It is a nasty defense. It's a show-me game for Harbaugh. You got to do it here. Hell of a matchup, and Notre Dame's got a pretty good defense as well, but they lost their defensive coordinator, Elko, who took off and went to A&M. Can you trust Wimbush as well, who was erratic at quarterback? Kelly has said he might play both guys at quarterback, but to me, put up or shut up time for Harbaugh. You know, Teddy, you went to Michigan. They pay him a ton of money. He's got to deliver on the stage now.
No, he doesn't. See, the whole Jim Harbaugh's got to do this. No, he doesn't. This is what Jim Harbaugh has to do. He has to stay at Michigan. The program is fine. The state of the program is fine. Last year, they've had quarterback problems. No question. The offense went from, 40 points a game down to 25 last year. A huge drop-off offensively. The offensive line play wasn't there. The QB play was there. Now they got Shea Patterson. And make no mistake about it, Shea Patterson, NFL upside, a stud when healthy in Mississippi. No question. Last year, what do you have? 2,200 passing yards, 17 scores before suffering that season-ending knee injury. But Tariq Black hurt for Michigan. He's out indefinitely due to a foot injury. That's an impact injury for the Wolverines. And Notre Dame, offensively, you talk about Wimbush. Let's not forget, they lost Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey to the from their offensive line, 2 top 10 picks from one college offensive line. One would think this year's offensive line is going to be a step or two down from that unit. But boy, you look at these two defenses. Wolverines loaded. Notre Dame lost their coordinator, as you mentioned, but certainly they are a team that has enormous defensive talent. Not a team that you would expect to be all of a sudden giving up points in bunches, even to a quarterback like Shea Patterson.
And Sunday night, Miami and LSU. Miami's 3.5, 46.5 the total. Money for the under. I agree with it. Burrow takes over at quarterback for LSU, and Richt has been terrific at Miami in September. 6-0, scoring 46 points per game. Miami on a 7-1-1 ATS run in September since 2015. On the flip side, LSU is 2-10 ATS in September since 2015. Miami allowed less than 20 points per game on defense, and they were number 3 in turnovers forced, takeaways with the turnover chain, Teddy. What do you think? Rozier, the key to Miami's season's Rozier, who got off to a good start, and he was terrible down the stretch. Miami also was a different team away from home last year.
Yeah. Well, look, Miami didn't lose the turnover battle any game until their last 2 games. Their last 2 games, they both lost. They failed to cover the spread. That included, but of course, you're talking about Clemson and then the ball game. It wasn't easy, but they were -2 in turnovers in both of those contests. Their turnover margin was higher when they were covering every single week. Burrow, we talked about the bad QBs from LSU, Danny Etling last year. Joe Burrow, maybe a good notch or 2 above that. Ohio State transfer, a guy who they have high hopes for. But the quote I keep getting from the bookmakers, I've seen it a couple different times. We're going to need LSU, but unfortunately, we don't think much of LSU this year. I've seen bookmakers around town talking multiple times and saying basically that same concept over and over. No question, the public's going to be Miami. The books will need the Tigers on Sunday.
All right, very good. We are on fire. What a week and a half run it's been. Let's keep this winning streak going. Northwestern outright last night, and the Raiders outright. Let's keep it going. Let's stay with Michigan, Notre Dame. Teddy, what do you want to do? We got some weather here possible.
We sure do. What we have here is a couple of really good defenses and a couple of teams that are going to trade some punches and counter punches. I don't think it's going to be big plays all the time for the Wolverines or the Fighting Irish. Game number 211, 212. Let's take Michigan, Notre Dame under the total, 46.5, the current number. We have bad weather expected. It's going to be windy. There's a chance of thunderstorm delays. I'm not expecting offensive rhythm here. Take the Wolverines and the Irish under the total. That's our play of the day.
All right, very good. For what it's worth, I like that under. I like Miami under, and I like the Washington game under as well, although that has moved big time. It's from the opener. Fun show. Great to be back. More line moves as the markets have gone crazy here all summer. Week 1's tough. I like to watch games, and we don't have a lot of info to go on so far. So we'll have more data once we get into these games coming up a couple of weeks in. But it's going to be a fun week. We'll be back next week to talk to you. Thanks for watching. I'm at Real Sportsbet on Twitter. He's at Teddy_covers. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. Low Shack in the Bay coming up. Thanks to the crew. Ozark, Season 2 on Netflix. Let's go get them out today.